started.
Okay, this is an experiment. I'm going to do a live commentary video. This is a 10-minute Blitz game. And there's a 5-second increment, so we don't have to worry about mad time scrambles at the end. My opponent has played d4, and I'm going to play d5 and maybe go into a Slav defense on this first try. So he plays c4. That's the normal response for Queen's Gambit, and I'm going to play c6, Queen's Gambit decline Slav. And he plays the normal move here, knight f3, and I go with knight f6. So in a setup like this, I am going to create the pawn triangle here. This gives me a very solid center. And he goes for the exciting line bishop g5. Okay, so there are some complications here. I don't know them all, but they start out with h6, so I will not be afraid of the complications, I guess. Oh, he takes. Oh, usually some of the wilder lines go if he just retreats the bishop, you can try and take a pawn and hold on to it here, but it gets complicated. Okay, so I've messed up my kingside here. Actually, I took back with a pawn without thinking about it. It might have been better to take with the queen and not suffer those nasty pawns on the kingside there. So what do I want to do? I want to take one of those pawns in the center. I don't want him to just have a large center. If I take the king pawn, he will take back with his knight, and he's hitting the f6 square, which is protected, so it's not a big threat immediately. I may have to castle queenside in this position, so it would make more sense to castle to exchange towards the king here and leave the lines closed on the queenside. But how am I ever going to develop? I've got a number of problems here. The knight wants to go to this square. It's probably the only one he can go to, and it blocks the bishop. So I have to move the knight and again move the bishop and move the queen in order to develop. And in the meantime, white has a good center. He's got a lot of pieces in the middle. So white's doing well here. Still, white has to come up with a plan. You know, he could just continue developing, and that's probably what I would do. You want to look for breaks in this position, so he might be thinking about playing d4 to d5. That's an idea here, so he's probably checking that out. He might be looking at ways of getting more pressure on my open king side. No, just a normal developing move. Okay, and it's hitting along this diagonal, allows him to castle. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick this knight just to gain a tempo. Now let's stop and think, where's the knight going to go? If the knight goes here, he loses a pawn, so he's probably going to go back to one of these squares. He could also go, okay, he went there. Now I'm going to put my knight over here so that my bishop has a place to develop to. And we'll see what Jim Jacket from the UK. Let's see what he does next. Okay, I'm going to continue mobilizing my queenside here. So I want to get the queen out of the way and the bishop out of the way so that I can castle queenside. And I'm thinking this queen to b6 looks like an interesting move. It hits this pawn and this pawn. This one is undefended, although I probably would not take it. Because the rook can chase the queen away, and he gets an open line to attack my king if I castle queenside. But seems like a decent square for the queen. He can attack the queen there with his knight. In the long run, maybe I want to try and get some pressure against... yeah, so he's put his queen directly opposite my king, which means there's a pin on this pawn, and so maybe d5 is a possibility. But right now, let's see, he pushes, I take, he takes, I can take with the knight, he takes, and I can't take back. So, okay, so d5 is a threat right now. One way I can meet that threat is by unpinning that pawn. So now if he pushes d5, it will kind of mess up my pawn structures, but he can't make a lot of progress without sacking a pawn. Yeah, it's probably worthwhile. It's probably a good sack. So let's take. I don't have to take all the way. Let's see where he comes back. If he comes back with a pawn, I could just leave that there. And try and castle queenside. It's interesting. If he puts his rook on c8, that maybe would cause me some trouble. c1. If he puts his rook on c1, looking at c8, I castle queenside. My king will be in the race, and they under the view of that nasty rook, and his knight could go here, for example, with check, winning my queen. So I do have to be careful here. Well, I'm kind of messed up this from the beginning. But we'll see. Sometimes there's ways to wiggle and squirm. The game isn't over. Ah, there he goes. Okay, so can't castle queenside. But I could think about blocking that. No, it doesn't look too appetizing. Okay, let's give up on queenside castling. That looks kind of open an area over there anyway. Keep the king in the center for one move longer and see what he does. One idea might be just to play king f7 and connect the rooks that way and not bother to... Yeah, that rules out king f7. Okay. Now, where can he go with that knight? He can come into... the g6 square over here. That might cause me some discomfort. And I can't really stop that I see. Let's see. So do I have any active ideas here? Let's just chase the knight. If he goes knight g6, I'll have to move my rook, and that means I won't be able to castle on either side. But the way my pawn structure is, maybe castling isn't such a great idea anyway. If he takes my bishop, I'm planning to retake with the knight. That might open up one of these diagonals. We will have... Oh, you know what the problem is? That would leave this pawn hanging, because the queen has a pin. After knight takes, the queen has a pin on this pawn, and so bishop takes on f5 is possible. So that means if he takes the bishop, I'll have to retake with the king. Just wondering if he might be able to do the tactic another way. He could take on f5 right away. No, he didn't. If he took on f5 right away and I retook with a pawn, then this knight would move a check, and that might pick up a queen, for example.
Check.
Okay, I can move back into this pin now because the bishop is not attacking that pawn right now. His knight could come to this square with check, but my knight is currently guarding that, fortunately. If he just moves his bishop back and tries to win this pawn again, I think I'll just move my king to f7. I think that's the square that the king belongs on. Okay, now this is tough. He's double attacking this. And my king is in the way of the most natural defenders. But I could clear a line for the bishop to, the queen. The queen can defend laterally this pawn. So 2 attackers, 2 defenders. And if the queen moves off, I may have a little threat on his pawn on f2. And I'll try and get my knight to g4 there. Attack on f2. That's kind of the plan. Maybe even put my rook here on the g file. You know, it's basically the shattered ruins of a position. I'm trying to salvage something from it. But that's what chess is like. Let's see. Any other ideas? I might want to kick this bishop, but actually I'm not afraid of the bishop sitting there, so why should I force it to move to a better square? So yeah, I think knight g4 is a very interesting idea here. And you can't move this pawn because it's pinned. And with the knight on that square, I'll actually be threatening to take. He has various defensive ideas, but probably he's thinking more about attacking. So, I mean, he could defend with the knight or the rook pretty easily. I guess my other attacking idea, if he secures this square, is to just double my rooks on the g file and try and crash through that way. I can always advance the h pawn here. It's not doing me much good now. This knight is actually doing a great job of keeping the queen out of some of these key squares here. I'm not sure. Yeah, I guess my opponent is having trouble coming up with a plan at this point. It's one of those positions where you know you have a good position. Look, his king is relatively safe. All his pawns are in front of it. His pieces are out and active. But there's no immediate plan that really jumps out at you in this position. So it's worthwhile investing some time. I guess if I were white, I would probably be thinking about putting my bishop on this square. It's protected by the queen, so discovery here will not win it. And it's another attacker on this square. Okay, so he did not do anything to prevent knight g4. Well, in a way he did. If I play knight g4, he can play his rook to d7 here. And let's see, where would I do? Would I get mated after that? The queen could come here if I went there. That would be pretty nasty. Let's see. So maybe I should just oppose that rook. If rook moves away, I also have another way to defend my poor, miserable e6 pawn here. He took. Okay. I think the simplified positions would favor me. If I were white, I would be looking for ways to advance without trading. But if things get simple enough, my king is actively posted in the middle for the endgame. Ah, that's the movie I was thinking of. That's not bad. So now the only way to defend that pawn is with the rook here. And then what's the liability? He's got a knight move. And if I try to block, yeah, I think I have to go this way. It's a little unfortunate that pawn is on a color square that I can't easily defend. Oh, you know what he has? He has knight to a4. That attacks the queen and the bishop. I move the queen, he takes the bishop, I take back, and then he can grab here, winning a pawn and threatening that pawn and threatening a discovered check. And I can't actually take back because the queen will just grab the rook. So white is just winning here. So let's see, is there anything I could do after knight a4? Well, I'm getting good at predicting those moves. Let's see. That's a check. And then the queen takes. I take and the king takes. The knight comes here with check. You know, I do have a pawn to b4 idea, but it's not supported. If there was a way to get support to that. Let's see. Yeah, I don't see it. I can threaten the bishop, but he will. Let's see. Knight there with check. So take, he takes, I take, king takes, knight to e4 check, and the king moves. But at that point, I'm just down a piece. I have a knight and a rook, and he has a rook. Oh, I can play my rook up to d4 and skewer those two. Maybe that's an idea. So let's go this route. Of course, he could just move his king, but he didn't.
Check.
He went this way.
Check.
And then after the king moves, play rook to... so after I play rook to e4, he's just going to move the bishop and defend the knight. So that's going to be good enough. He'll be a piece up. So maybe that was too quick. So, is there any other idea here? Let's see. At the moment, nothing is hanging. If I play the pawn here first, or maybe I can pick up another pawn. Okay, so let's try this. So I'd expect bishop to bishop b3 or bishop to b5. That's the square of the square. If the bishop goes here, I can kick it again. But if it goes to that square, it's pretty safe. The only thing I have is I could kick the knight, I suppose. Yep. So pawn here. Where does the knight go? Knight goes there, there. That's a pretty good square. I guess the idea would be to attack the pawn first. And then try and chase the knight away. Knight doesn't have a lot of squares. But that, unfortunately, for me anyway, is a safe square for the knight. Yeah, so he goes for that directly. Now, if I move my knight, he's got this attack on my pawn again, but where could I go? guess I can go to this square. I want to keep pieces on. As a way to improve my drawing chances. And I'll try and win a pawn or two here or there, maybe give me some chances in the end game. So we are starting to get low on time, so maybe time will eventually become a factor here too. So I could also consider taking the bishop, pawn, knight takes bishop, pawn takes, and then king takes, rook takes. Rook takes on b2 there. Ah, he just opposes my rook. That's probably good enough. So everything's protected of his pieces. That's kind of nice for him. Nice for him. So let's go back to here. Let's see. Where can his knight go that will cause trouble? If his knight goes to the b file, I'll just play rook to b. If the knight goes here to b5, I'll play rook b6. And I'll just bring back this idea of taking the bishop and maybe winning a pawn over there. So I have 2 pawns in the center. Things are not hopeless. I could consider moving my king up here and trying to advance these pawns. Ah, he goes for that. So he's getting out of the line of fire. Oh, he's going to kick my bishop. He's going to kick my... kick my knight with a pawn move, I think. That's why I got the bishop out of the way. So, I can't stop that. But there are other places. The knight, I should have checked before I moved. The knight has moves, and I kept the pawn defended. That was the other idea of the rook coming back to this square. Yeah, he did. Okay, kick the knight. See what I care. I think the only safe move for the knight, if I don't want to trade it off, is to put it to that square. So let's start to move a little more quickly now that time is getting low. Yep, he hits the... and it's funny, I can't really take that pawn, and he can take that pawn. He was forking the rook and the pawn, so I think I was going to lose one of those anyway. I might move my knight to this square, forcing his bishop to move, and then I can grab the pawn if he takes the pawn. He's going to have to start moving quickly here. Ah, he went there first. Okay, so I can kick the knight. Ah, yes, he can triple on that. But the nice thing about this is that it's no longer pinned. So my idea was just to advance the pawn if it's attacked. Could have also tried knight to that square, I suppose. I didn't calculate that. So let's kick that knight one more time and then go after the bishop. My king and knight are on dark squares, so and the rook too, so they're sort of exempt from that bishop. And my pawns are a target, though, and I don't know quite how to deal with that. If his knight were not defending the bishop, then I would have pawn up as the idea to undermine here and use the pin. So maybe I just want to get the knight out of the way. Move my king forward to chase his knight. Although it's interesting. Yes, he can keep harassing me.
Time warning.
And my time will get low. So let's go here, attacking the rook. And then where? Ah, now I'm in trouble now. I'm in trouble now. So I could attack his knight too. He takes my knight, I take his knight. I just if I move the knight away, looks like I was going to lose this pawn here, and I didn't want to give that one up. So I've got to do something like this. I get one tempo on his bishop. I can try and attack these pawns over here. And momentarily, he's not going after this pawn, although eventually...
White forfeits on pawn.
Well, that was just plain dumb luck. He was definitely winning here. You know, these endgames are not so easy when your opponent has some counter advantage. So white has the extra piece, and he's just winning. Black has two pawns in the center, which are a potential threat, and white has no pawn threats. So if he were to have developed these pawns and got his king active, maybe that would have been a stronger plan for him. But really, there was no reason for white to lose this. It's just a matter of running out of time. Okay, that's up for this. You know what I'm going to do with these Blitz videos is I'm going to take the game and run it through Houdini and go over it. So there'll be a follow-up video where I point out all my blunders. And hope you guys enjoy that. See you next time. Bye.